What's happening, Flow Jedis? This video is going to be a little bit controversial, but I'm ready to face that challenge. 2022. Let's get it.
Yeah. I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
Desire is a pathway to the divine. I said it, and I mean it. Oh, I mean it. Like Jeezy said. Margot Anand said, by far the highest attainment in Tantra is to remain desireless at the peak of desire. Okay? Now, to you that sounds like an oxymoron, but let's start to understand this a little bit deeper. Sexual energy is a powerful energy. We know this. Many spiritual paths see desire as one of the biggest blockages ever. And the way I see it is it's very far along on a certain part of the spectrum, okay? Desire is like a spectrum. It's not this one thing. It's not like an end result. It's not a flagpole. But it's a building up, it's a crescendo. See, we can't really get rid of desire. We can only become more conscious around it. Because if you're seeking to be desireless, guess what? That's still a desire. You're stuck in this paradox. Just start to become more aware of your desire. This is how I've been able to, have more self-control. So the real question is, how can you remain present when you have desire arising within you? Many meditators will tell you that they find that sexual obsession is a blockage to the pathway of meditation, that it causes a lot of distraction. So they'll tell you things like imagine the body like it's rotting meat. Monks and nuns from Christianity to Buddhism choose celibacy as a method to overcome physical desire, instead to focus on the spiritual experience. Now we do know whatever we resist will persist. And practitioners, most practitioners, not the neo-tantrikas, I'm talking about most practitioners, will dress very moderately to avoid that sexual arousal. But you walk into any yoga studio, it's a different story. You see, in Tantra, they don't see desire as a block, but as a key to unlock. Wow, that's a quote. That's a quotable. Okay, you can quote me on that one, okay? Not as a block, but a key to unlock. Tantra doesn't say to follow all desire indiscriminately, nor does it say to block it or repress it. Tantra invites you to bring conscious awareness to your desire. What is the energy that is held within that desire? If you can become present with the desire that emerges, you will develop a potent presence, like being the eye of the storm. It's very important to differentiate Tantra from hedonism. Hedonism tells you to get lost in the pleasure, lost in the desire. Do whatever makes you feel the greatest amount of pleasure. If you notice, throughout history, hedonism peaks just before an empire collapses. Very symbolic of the fact that desire without awareness can possess you and ruin you. We know this from countless kings who have been swayed by their own desires. Oh, we've seen it so many times, right? The same story. This is only desire without awareness. Desire with awareness, however, we start to find the source of desire. Where is the origin point for this? Where does it come from? We start looking a layer deeper rather than just the experience of it, the extremities of it, and the pleasure that is basically hardwired. So I invite you to think about the idea of healing and awareness through desire and not blocking it away. One of the guiding principles in Tantra is the idea of the personal will and the divine will. Personal will is like what I want to do. God's will is like God's plan. You'll notice that people who separate themselves from the world at large and they get more into their egoic mind, they start to develop fetishes and kinks and personal desires. All this does is it serves the false self for the ego. This makes you feel like an outcast, like you don't belong. This gives you a sense of separateness. Ultimately, this form of desire only creates more suffering and pain. You see, personal desire is cut off from our true nature. It serves our own self-image, but does it actually serve the collective at large? So if you're using your desire for your own selfish gain, that's fine, but this is not the pathway that I'm talking about. Because if you feel guilty about your desires, you're cutting off that pathway to awareness. Therefore, you're letting the unconscious desires, the shadow desires come up. Those that you repress, or you feel like, oh, this is too secret. It's like sneaking out at the kitchen to have a little piece of cake. Or to watch some porn that has some weird kink in it, so that nobody can find out. Or we seek this person who has that same desire as us, like his partner in crime, so they can join in on the secrecy. And this is not about what we do, it's in the way that we do it. Hidden in secrecy. That's why it's a shadow desire. It's not a desire you're freely owning up to and being like, yeah, man, I like this thing. But instead you feel the need to hide it from fear of judgment. But as you bring your consciousness to your desire, something within you will start to transform. Transform, meaning beyond form. When you have awareness with the desire, consciousness with the desire, the guilt and the shame you will notice will start to drop away. Because you understand that it's there to serve consciousness. Your desire, that pull, is there to serve humanity. And not just yourself. Not just your self-preservation mechanism. So in a sense, this requires us dropping the personal will or our will for God's will. Okay, dropping the ego for egolessness or a flow state. To stop letting our self-images control us, like, oh, I'm not that kind of a person. But instead allowing ourselves to merge with the divine. This is about tuning into your desire and what your higher self wants with that desire. What your higher purpose is with your desires. This is not something we try to do like acting piously or you trying to do the right thing. But it happens naturally as you work through being much more aware of your desire through the practice of tantra or otherwise. You see, divine desire has never been created to harm other human beings and to cause any kind of separateness from others. It's there for the interconnectedness of all things. It's there to serve humanity and the greater collective consciousness. You see, the ultimate desire is love. Until that is all we desire, to give, to receive, and to be love, then we still have a lot more work to do in terms of this desire. When people can step out of their personal desire to this divine desire, we get to unity consciousness then. Okay? We start to serve humanity. We start to uplift people. We start to live in higher vibration. But when we live out our personal desires, it's like, oh, there's conflict. Right? We're separating others outside of our circle. Immediately there's a sense of competition. And we feel like we need to fight for these limited resources. And we feel the sense of lack, like, oh, I don't have enough. I need more, I need more. This craving, this attachment, this neediness has got to go. You don't need it, you want it. What is a need? Water is a need. Do you need another person? You don't need them, you want them. Okay? It's time to differentiate between your wants and your needs. When we live as love, when we live as that driving desire, that force within us, then we start to understand that this is a connective tissue to other people. Because everybody has this thing within them where they can actually live as love. It's like they can change their radio frequency to Love FM. And if everybody tunes into that frequency, guess what? Creativity emerges. New insight, new innovation, new technologies emerge. This is why it's so important to have an inner circle and a group of people where we can share ideas with each other. And we can understand what is our divine desire as a collective group together, and what is, our personal desires, which might be a little bit distorted. And hey, people can help us call us out on this when there is the power of the tribe and the group. Without judgment, when people are listening to us, our old fears, our old patterns start to fade away. and we start to get to realize the ultimate truth of the self. If a tantra circle isn't people loving, hugging, high-fiving, dancing, there is no unified field. When the dissolution of the self has happened, we start to be way more kind to others, way more open with others. There's spontaneous creativity happening. There could be a collaboration on that spot. One person's creativity effortlessly flows into another person's creativity. Rhythm and harmony, rhythm and harmony. You don't need to cut this off. This is another pathway to self-realization. So even if you're having very sexual thoughts, remain present as that's happening. Don't let the impulses take control of you, right? And start running you. You run it. You are the controller. You are the conductor. Controller. Okay? Why am I mentioning Drake so much, man? It's so weird. When we awaken, we shift from our personal to the universal. However, start to understand also the principle of however personal it is, the more universal it is, right? There are people out there with your kinks and all of this kind of stuff, but just make sure that it doesn't separate you, it doesn't isolate you, you don't repress it, you don't keep your desires hidden inside of you, like it's some kind of a private thing. Your desires are there to be shared. And when it's attributed to this guilt and the shame within you, you start to feel really bad within. But once you see that a community shifts into divine desire together, pure love FM together, universal consciousness, unity consciousness together, there is pure creativity that emerges. Then there's no sense of scarcity, competition, separation anymore. There's just flow. And that's what I aim for you. Happy 2022. This is the year of flow. Have an incredible day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. Let's get it. Oh,